During World War II, tens of thousands of British soldiers were captured by the Imperial Japanese Army in the wake of stunning early defeats in Asia, particularly after the fall of Singapore in 1942. What followed was a brutal and often forgotten chapter of wartime suffering: the inhumane treatment of British prisoners of war (POWs) in Japanese captivity. Subjected to forced labor, starvation, disease, and relentless brutality, their ordeal remains one of the darkest and least acknowledged aspects of the war in the Pacific. The fall of Singapore and mass captivity. The Japanese invasion of British Malaya and the subsequent capture of Singapore on February 15, 1942, led to one of Britain's greatest military disasters. Over 80,000 British, Australian, and Indian troops were taken prisoner in one stroke. These men, trained for conventional warfare in Europe or North Africa, were wholly unprepared for jungle warfare, and even less so for the cruelty of their captors. The Japanese military adhered to a strict code of honor influenced by Bushido, which viewed surrender as dishonorable. As a result, they saw POWs as weak and unworthy of respect. This ideological contempt translated into appalling treatment. Life in the camps: disease, hunger, and death. British POWs were sent to various prison camps across Southeast Asia, including in Thailand, Burma, now Myanmar, Taiwan, and Japan itself. One of the most notorious projects they were forced to work on was the Burma-Thailand Railway, later nicknamed the Death Railway. Conditions in these camps were horrific. Malnutrition. Rations were minimal, often just rice and watery soup, and lacked essential nutrients. Starvation became a daily reality. Tropical diseases, malaria, cholera, dysentery, and beriberi ran rampant. Medical supplies were almost non-existent. Forced labor. Prisoners worked up to 18 hours a day in extreme heat and humidity, often barefoot and under constant threat of violence. Brutality. Beatings, torture, and executions were commonplace for the slightest perceived infraction. One of the most infamous camps was Changi in Singapore, initially thought to be one of the better camps due to its relatively humane start. However, conditions worsened as the war dragged on, especially as prisoners were shipped out to other locations under even harsher regimes. The Burma-Thailand Death Railway. Constructed between 1942 and 1943, the railway stretched over 400 kilometers through dense jungle. Over 60,000 Allied POWs, including more than 30,000 British, were forced to work on it alongside hundreds of thousands of Asian civilian laborers. Estimates suggest that more than 12,000 Allied POWs died during its construction, many from starvation, disease, or direct abuse. British survivors recalled the agonizing toll, watching friends perish while continuing to work under the whip. The bridge over the River Kwai, popularized by film, was only one part of a vast and deadly infrastructure project. Psychological and post-war trauma. For those who survived, liberation in 1945 was not the end of suffering. Many returned to Britain with lingering health problems and profound psychological scars. Worse still, their stories were often met with indifference or disbelief. Unlike the European theater, where Nazi brutality was thoroughly documented and prosecuted, the plight of POWs in Asia was underreported. The British government, eager to rebuild and maintain diplomatic ties in Asia, often downplayed the atrocities. Moreover, many former POWs faced what we now understand as post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, but at the time little to no support was available. Their suffering was internalized and often silenced. A legacy of silence slowly broken. Only in recent decades has the true extent of British suffering in Japanese POW camps begun to receive the recognition it deserves. Documentaries, memoirs, and scholarly research have helped bring these forgotten voices to light. Organizations like the Far East Prisoners of War Association (FEPO) have fought tirelessly for recognition, memorials, and justice. Survivors and their families continue to tell their stories, ensuring that the world does not forget the human cost of war in the Pacific. The ordeal of British POWs in Japanese camps during World War II stands as a harrowing testament to human endurance, cruelty, and the cost of imperial warfare. These men were not just prisoners, they were forgotten victims of a brutal campaign, caught in the clash of cultures, ideologies, and empires. Remembering their suffering is not just an act of history, it is a moral duty.